The Saturn Outpost commander, Major Diana Chen, ordered an immediate lockdown as the transformed Prometheus hung motionless against the starfield. Her hands trembled slightly as she authorized emergency protocols. "Send the recognition codes," she commanded, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "And get me Admiral Kowalski at Earth Command." The outpost communications officer transmitted the standard recognition sequence. For several tense minutes, the enormous vessel, now covered in that strange network of pulsing blue veins, remained silent. Then a response came through, perfectly matching the 5-year-old verification codes. "This is UES Prometheus returning to service," came a voice that matched Captain Elena Reyes's voiceprint. "Request immediate audience with Earth leadership." Major Chen stared at the visual feed. The ship's familiar silhouette was distorted by new structures that shouldn't exist, angular protrusions and curved sections that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that hurt the eyes. Sensor readings indicated power levels that exceeded the original vessel's capacity by at least 15,000%. "Captain Reyes," Chen responded carefully, "your ship was declared lost with all hands. We require explanation and full biometric verification before." "We understand your caution, Major," Reyes interrupted, her voice carrying an unfamiliar resonance. "But there are urgent matters that cannot wait for standard procedures." The main view screen activated without command input. Captain Reyes appeared, but something about her was fundamentally changed. Her posture remained military precise, but her movements flowed with unnatural smoothness. The captain's eyes reflected starlight differently, almost as if they contained their own inner luminescence. "We encountered something out there," Reyes continued. "Something that changed us, improved us. And we learned of a threat approaching this galaxy that will destroy everything unless we prepare." Admiral Kowalski's face appeared on a secondary screen, his expression grave. "Chen, establish a quarantine perimeter. No one approaches or leaves that vessel." He turned toward Reyes's image. "Captain, if that's really you, you'll respect protocols and submit to inspection." Captain Reyes smiled, a gesture that somehow seemed both genuine and practiced, as if she was remembering how to form the expression. "Admiral, with respect, we don't have time for quarantine procedures." She gestured slightly, and every screen in Saturn Outpost flickered with mathematical formulas and spatial coordinates. "This data proves what's coming. You have 3 minutes to examine it before we proceed to Earth." Scientists at the outpost scrambled to analyze the information flooding their systems. Dr. Erin Nagata, the station's quantum physicist, gasped as she recognized the implications. "Sir," she called out, her voice shaking, "these are legitimate space-time calculations. They're generations beyond our current understanding, but they're internally consistent. Whatever this is, it's real science." Major Chen watched as the massive ship began to move, accelerating at rates that defied known propulsion limitations. The blue veins pulsed more intensely as a faint distortion formed around the vessel's hull. "What are you doing, Prometheus?" she demanded. "Saving time," Captain Reyes replied simply. "We'll reach Earth in 17 minutes. Have your leadership ready." Before anyone could respond, the transformed ship vanished in a flash of blue light, leaving behind only a fading ripple in the fabric of space and a terrified outpost full of witnesses trying to comprehend what their lost heroes had become. Mars Colony 1 transformed overnight from a scientific outpost into humanity's most critical diplomatic venue. Security personnel established 3 perimeters around the main conference facility, though everyone quietly acknowledged the futility of such measures against a vessel that could apparently fold space at will. Dr. Sanjay Mehta arrived via emergency shuttle, his aged face drawn with exhaustion and wonder. He'd spent the 17 minutes of the Prometheus's impossible journey to Earth reviewing the data package it had transmitted. Now, as he walked the gleaming corridors of Mars Colony 1, he struggled to process the implications. "The equations suggest they've discovered how to manipulate quantum fields directly," he explained to United Earth Director Amara Okafor as they hurried toward the preparation room. If legitimate, this technology makes our most advanced systems look like stone tools. Director Okafor nodded grimly. And you believe this is the real Prometheus? Not some alien deception. The quantum signature matches our original design, Meta replied. But what they've done to it? He shook his head. It's like comparing a candle to a supernova. Inside the preparation room, representatives from 17 nations reviewed security protocols, while Stellar Concord ambassadors huddled in tense discussion. The Mithrai delegate, Elder Sephoria, watched through compound eyes that reflected the room in kaleidoscopic patterns. Your lost ones have returned change, she said, her translator rendering her chittering speech into smooth English. Our histories tell of such transformations. Rarely do they end peacefully. Director Okafor was about to respond when the facility's lights flickered. The Prometheus had arrived, materializing directly in Mars orbit without passing any of the system's early warning networks. Captain Reyes and 3 crew members transported directly into the adjacent chamber, not using any recognized teleportation technology, but simply existing there when moments before they had not. The security team's weapons raised automatically. Lower your weapons, Reyes said softly. They would not protect you anyway. The 4 returned crew members stood with perfect posture, their movements synchronized in subtle ways. Each bore the silver disk at their temple, pulsing with gentle blue light. Their eyes contained the same strange luminescence noticed at Saturn Outpost. Dr. Mehta approached his former student with cautious steps. Elena, do you remember the last thing I said to you before launch? Captain Rice smiled, a genuine expression that momentarily softened her transformed countenance. You said, "Don't bring back anything I wouldn't approve of." I'm afraid I failed you there, Sanjay. The tension in the room eased slightly at this human exchange. Commander Zhao Lai, the Prometheus's first officer, stepped forward. His movements were fluid, too perfect to be natural. We have approximately 26 months before the Convergence scout ships reach this solar system. We've brought technology and knowledge to prepare humanity, but implementation requires trust. The Vixilian ambassador, a being of crystalline structure, vibrated in alarm. What do these humans know of the Convergence? This is clearly deception. Lieutenant Kara Johnson, once the Prometheus's communication specialist, turned toward the Vixilian. The silver disk at her temple pulsed brighter. Your species encountered a Convergence probe 300 years ago, she said, her voice resonating strangely. Your government classified the incident and destroyed the research vessel that discovered it. 17 of your scientists were executed to maintain secrecy. The crystalline ambassador shattered into fragments that quickly reformed, a sign of extreme distress in Vixilian physiology. How could you possibly know this? The ambassador demanded. Captain Rice looked across the assembled representatives with eyes that seemed to see beyond the physical. Because where we've been, time and knowledge flow differently. And now, we've returned to save you all. The conference room fell silent after Navigator Chen's demonstration. The perfect replica of the Concord homeworld rotated slowly above the table, showing details that no human database contained. Even the Mithrai elder leaned forward, compound eyes widening at the accurate representation of their sacred mountains, areas prohibited to off-world imaging. How is this possible? Dr. Mehta whispered, reaching toward the miniature worlds but stopping short of touching them. Captain Rice gestured slightly, and the display expanded to include stellar positions and movement patterns. The axiom existed for millions of years before ascending beyond physical form. They mapped this galaxy and countless others. And they simply gave you this knowledge. Director Okafor asked, suspicion evident in her voice. Engineer Santos, once the Prometheus's chief of propulsion, stepped forward. The silver disk at his temple pulsed in harmony with the others. Not gave, entrusted. The axiom were dying, the last of their kind. They searched for species capable of adapting to their knowledge. They tried with 17 other civilizations before us, Lieutenant Johnson added. All failed. Their neural pathways couldn't accommodate the information transfer. Dr. Mehta's scientific curiosity overcame his caution. What made humans different? Neuroplasticity, Captain Rice replied. Our brains evolved to adapt rapidly compared to most sentient species. The Axiom discovered this unique quality and recognized our potential. The Goran ambassador, a being composed of interlocking plant structures, emitted a scent indicating disbelief. Convenient that only humans were suitable for this transformation. Commander Zhao turned to face the plant-like diplomat. We understand your skepticism. The Axiom attempted integration with your ancestors during your species' third evolutionary epoch. Your historical records call it the Great Withering. 14,000 Goran died when their nervous systems rejected the neural imprint. The Goran's foliage contracted in shock. This information existed only in their most sacred archives. Medical Officer Dr. Sarah Lindholm, her movements carrying the same uncanny grace as her crewmates, approached the conference table. We can demonstrate the transformation process for those who require proof. She placed her palm against the table's surface. The material beneath her hand briefly liquefied, then restructured into a complex device with pulsing blue circuitry. This is a simplified neural interface modeled after our implants, she explained. It can safely provide a momentary connection to our shared consciousness, enough to verify our claims without risk of permanent alteration. Security personnel moved protectively toward their respective leaders, but Director Okafor waved them back. And if I were to use this device, what would I experience? A fraction of what we experienced during 50 subjective years with the Axiom, Captain Rice answered. Knowledge normally requiring decades to master, understood in moments. The true nature of reality beyond the limitations of human perception. Dr. Mehta studied the device with professional interest. The interface architecture suggests quantum entanglement at the neural level. Remarkable. It's more than that, Navigator Chen said softly. The Axiom discovered that consciousness itself is a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. Their technology, our technology now, simply allows us to manipulate that force directly. To demonstrate, Chen held up his hand. The miniature planetary display collapsed into a swirling vortex of light, then reformed as a three-dimensional map of neural pathways. The human mind already contains the framework for this understanding. We've simply activated what was dormant. Captain Rice turned to Director Okafor, her transformed eyes reflecting an ancient wisdom. The question isn't whether you believe us. It's whether humanity is ready to evolve beyond its current limitations before the convergence arrives to consume us all. The Concord Council chambers on Europa Station hummed with tense energy as Admiral Kessler slammed his fist against the holographic display. The three-dimensional model of the approaching convergent scout vessels distorted momentarily under the impact. These readings could be fabricated, he insisted, glaring at the Prometheus crew. Convenient that only you can detect these supposed invaders with your miraculous technology. Captain Rice remained motionless, her transformed eyes reflecting the hologram's light in unnatural patterns. We anticipated your skepticism, Admiral. That's why we've prepared a demonstration. Commander Zhao stepped forward, the disk at his temple pulsing rapidly. The holographic display expanded, encompassing the entire chamber. Suddenly, the council members found themselves seemingly transported to deep space, surrounded by stars and drifting among distant galaxies. This is not an illusion, Zhao explained as gasps echoed around the chamber. We're creating a quantum viewing window into actual space, 3 light-years beyond the heliopause. Dr. Mehta, invited as Earth's scientific representative, studied the phenomenon with wide eyes. Impossible. You're bending space-time to create real-time observation across light years. A simple application of dimensional folding, Lieutenant Johnson replied. Watch carefully. The convergent scout vessel will appear in approximately 40 seconds. The gathered officials fell silent, many reaching out to touch the stars that appeared solid before them. Then, at the edge of their field of view, something emerged from the darkness, a vessel unlike any they had encountered. It seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, its surface rippling like liquid metal formed into an asymmetrical shape that defied conventional engineering principles. "That's no known design," the Mithrai elder whispered, her compound eyes reflecting the darkness of the alien ship. Captain Reyes nodded grimly. "The Convergence doesn't build ships as we understand them. They grow them from absorbed biomass and consciousness, creating vessels that are extensions of their collective mind." As they watched, the alien craft emitted a pulse of silver energy that expanded outward. When it touched a nearby comet, the frozen body simply dissolved, its matter seemingly absorbed into the pulse. "They convert matter directly into energy and information," Navigator Chen explained. "Anything they touch becomes part of them, including sentient beings and their knowledge." The demonstration ended abruptly, the stars fading as the council chamber returned to normal. Several officials remained frozen in their positions, hands still outstretched toward stars that no longer existed before them. Defense Minister Yvonne Takahashi of Earth's United Defense Force rose slowly from her seat. "If this threat is real, why did your Axiom mentors not stop it themselves?" "The Axiom evolved beyond physical form," Captain Reyes replied. "They could observe the Convergence but no longer interact with physical reality to combat it. They needed vessels, minds that could bridge the gap between transcendent understanding and physical action. And they chose humans," Minister Takahashi said, her voice mixing wonder and suspicion. "They chose us because we were the only species capable of adapting quickly enough," Commander Zhao corrected. "The Convergence has consumed thousands of civilizations across multiple galaxies. It learns and evolves with each absorption." Chief Scientist Vorel of the Concord Defense Fleet adjusted his atmospheric suit nervously. "And the asteroid that nearly struck Mars yesterday, was that another demonstration?" Captain Reyes turned her transformed gaze toward him. "No, that was the first test. The Convergence fired a kinetic weapon to evaluate our defenses. We intercepted it before you even detected the threat." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "They already know we're here." The newly constructed Prometheus vessels hovered in perfect formation above Europa's icy surface, their hulls pulsing with synchronized blue energy. Inside the Concord Security Council's emergency chamber, the holographic feeds displayed the failed stealth operation in excruciating detail. Elite Concord forces rendered helpless as their ships passed harmlessly through the partially phased vessel. "This is precisely why they must be contained," High Marshal Vrex of the Concord Military Command bellowed, his scaled skin flushing deep crimson in agitation. 4 new vessels constructed in hours from Jupiter's atmosphere. Technology that renders our most advanced weapons useless. The humans have become a greater threat than this supposed convergence. Director Okafor stood her ground, flanked by Earth's military leaders. If Captain Reyes intended domination, why demonstrate restraint? Their ships could have eliminated your attack force, but chose nonviolence. The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Mehta studied the sensor readings from the newly formed vessels, his weathered face illuminated by the display's blue glow. "The molecular structure is unlike anything we've encountered," he muttered to Minister Takahashi. "These ships aren't constructed in any conventional sense. They're grown, with neural pathways running throughout the whole material. They're alive." Outside the chamber, Captain Reyes and Commander Zhu stood on Europa's observation deck, watching Jupiter's swirling clouds through the reinforced viewport. Their silver neural discs pulsed in silent communication. "They fear what they don't understand," Zhao said quietly. "As we once did." Reyes nodded, her transformed eyes reflecting Jupiter's great red spot. The Concord species evolved through competition and survival. Trust requires a fundamental shift in perspective. "And time," Zhao added, "which we don't have." A slight smile crossed Reyes' face as she placed her hand against the viewport. The transparent material rippled like water under her touch, tiny motes of blue light spreading outward. "Perhaps we can make time work differently for us, old friend." Inside the chamber, the argument reached its crescendo when every screen suddenly displayed the same image, a three-dimensional rendering of the solar system with an expanding silver web approaching from the outer darkness. "This is the Convergence Network," Raya's voice explained, though she remained physically absent from the room. "Their consciousness expands ahead of their physical vessels, probing for resistance and intelligence." The display zoomed outward, revealing hundreds of silver tendrils stretching across neighboring star systems, all converging toward the Sol system. "They've already absorbed 14 outposts across 5 systems," Navigator Chen's voice continued. The Concord long-range listening posts in the Kuiper Belt went silent not from equipment failure, but because they no longer exist. High Marshal Vrex froze, his protest dying in his throat. "Those outposts were classified." "How could you possibly?" "Because we can perceive the echoes of their destruction," Raya's voice answered. "The convergence doesn't simply destroy, it consumes and integrates. Each absorption makes it stronger and more knowledgeable." The observation deck doors slid open as Captain Rice and Commander Zhao entered the chamber. The neural discs at their temples glowed brighter than before. "We've established the defensive line at the heliopause," Rice announced calmly. "The original Prometheus crew will coordinate from there, while our new vessels begin constructing the solar shield array." "You've been given no authorization to," began the Vexillian ambassador. "We're not asking permission," Commander Zhao interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "Earth has authorized us to protect humanity by any means necessary. We invite the Concord to join us rather than obstruct us." Captain Rice gazed around the chamber, her eyes meeting each official's in turn. "The convergence arrives in 18 days, not the months we initially projected. Their consciousness has accelerated their physical transit. The time for debate has ended." The battle near Pluto's orbit defied conventional physics. The Prometheus fleet moved as a single organism, their hulls phasing between states of matter as silver tendrils from the convergent scout vessels lashed out across the void. Inside the lead Prometheus vessel, Captain Rice and her original crew stood within a chamber of swirling blue energy. Their bodies remained physically present, but their consciousness extended throughout their fleet, guiding the newly formed ships with perfect coordination. "They're adapting to our defensive patterns," Lieutenant Johnson observed as a convergence tendril narrowly missed one of their vessels. The silver appendage seemed to learn from each failed attack, changing tactics with unsettling intelligence. "As expected," Commander Zhao replied, his physical voice calm while his extended consciousness directed countermeasures across 3 vessels simultaneously. "The convergence evolves through absorption. Each encounter increases their understanding." On Earth, the battle appeared as abstract holographic representations in the United Defense Force headquarters. Admiral Kowalski and Dr. Mehta watched in stunned silence as conventional physics seemed to break down in the battle zone. Space itself appeared to fold and ripple around the combatants. "They're manipulating gravitational fields," Dr. Mehta whispered, adjusting his spectacles as he studied the sensor readings. "Creating localized singularities as weapons, technology centuries beyond our understanding." The Concord observation vessel maintained a cautious distance, its sensors struggling to process what they witnessed. The Mithrai elder aboard stood motionless, her compound eyes reflecting the distant flashes of impossible energies. "It is as the ancient records foretold," she chittered softly to her aides. "The battle beyond comprehension that precedes the Great Darkness." Back at the battlefront, a convergence vessel managed to extend a silver filament that contacted the hull of the smallest Prometheus ship. Where they touched, the blue energy patterns faltered momentarily. Captain Rice felt the intrusion like a cold spike through her extended consciousness. "Neural breach on Vessel 4, she announced, her physical body tensing as she directed additional energy to the compromised section. "They're attempting to access our network." Through their shared consciousness, the crew felt the convergence presence, an ancient, hungry intelligence composed of countless absorbed minds, all subsumed into a singular purpose: expansion through consumption. Navigator Chen's consciousness interfaced directly with the breach point, creating a quantum barrier that sealed off the intrusion. Their processing architecture is organic but non-human. Billions of neural patterns all synchronized but imprisoned within the collective. They're sending a transmission, Lieutenant Johnson reported as her consciousness monitored communication channels across 13-dimensional frequencies simultaneously. The message appeared across all Prometheus vessels, pulsing in mathematical patterns that translated into concepts rather than words. Your evolution interests us. Join our perfection. Resistance brings dissolution. Captain Rice directed her consciousness forward, focusing the combined mental energy of her crew into a counterattack. A controlled singularity formed between the fleets, its gravitational field precisely calibrated to affect only the convergence vessels. "Show them our answer," she commanded. The singularity pulsed with blue energy before expanding rapidly. Space-time distorted around the convergent scout ships, compressing and twisting their hulls. The silver vessels struggled against the gravitational trap, their forms elongating impossibly before collapsing inward. As the singularity dissipated, Captain Rice returned her full consciousness to her physical body. Blood trickled from her nose, the neural disk at her temple glowing bright enough to cast shadows. First contact concluded, she announced to Earth and the observing Concorde vessel. The Convergence main fleet will now be aware of our capabilities. They will adapt, and they will accelerate their approach. She turned to her crew, their faces showing the same exhaustion and determination. We've won the first battle, but they now know exactly what they're facing. The real war begins now. The integration chamber beneath Geneva headquarters hummed with blue energy as the next volunteer entered. Lieutenant Commander Maya Patel removed her uniform jacket and sat in the reclined chair, her expression resolute despite having witnessed the previous candidate's seizures just hours earlier. "You understand the risks," Captain Rice said, her voice gentle as she stood beside the chair. The neural disk at her temple pulsed in rhythm with the chamber's ambient energy. 1 in 3 does not survive the initial neural remapping. Patel nodded firmly. "I've seen what's coming, Captain. The risk is acceptable." Dr. Lindholm approached with a simplified version of the silver neural disk. "We've modified the integration process to reduce trauma, but the fundamentals remain unchanged. Your consciousness will expand beyond normal human limitations. The experience is overwhelming." Behind observation glass, Dr. Mehta monitored neural patterns alongside Concorde medical observers. The Vixillian scientist adjusted crystalline, sensory organs to better analyze the energy patterns. The successful integrations show remarkable consistency, the alien observer noted. Human neural plasticity allows rapid adaptation, where our simulations predicted catastrophic rejection. Dr. Mehta frowned at the readings. Even with their modifications, the process essentially rewrites fundamental brain architecture. It's a miracle anyone survives. On the chamber floor, Captain Rice placed the modified disk against Lieutenant Commander Patel's temple. "Focus on a memory, something that defines your humanity. Hold it as an anchor during the transition." Patel closed her eyes. "I'm ready." The disk adhered to her skin, pulsing once before melding seamlessly with her temple. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Patel's body arched in the chair, her eyes flying open, now shining with the same inner luminescence that marked all the transformed. A silent scream formed on her lips as her consciousness expanded beyond its biological constraints for the first time. Through the observation glass, the monitoring equipment registered neural activity expanding exponentially, consciousness fragmenting and reforming in patterns impossible for a normal human brain. "Stabilization at 63%, Dr. Lindholm announced, her hands moving across holographic controls with preternatural precision. "Neural architecture accepting modification." Captain Rice leaned closer, her voice low. "Follow my consciousness, Maya. I'll guide you through the transition." The silver discs on both women pulsed in synchronization. Patel's rigid body gradually relaxed, her breathing steadying as her mind adapted to its new capabilities. Connection established. Commander Zhao confirmed from his monitoring station. Lieutenant Commander Patel is successfully integrated into the network. When Patel's eyes focused again, her perception had fundamentally changed. She saw beyond visible light, beyond three-dimensional space. The room's occupants appeared surrounded by auras of thought and emotion, their neural patterns visible to her transformed senses. "I can see everything," she whispered. "Feel everything." Her hand reached out, fingers trembling as she manipulated energy directly, creating a small sphere of blue light above her palm. In the observation room, the Concord representatives murmured in mixture of awe and concern. The Mithrai elder stepped forward, her compound eyes reflecting the blue light from the chamber. "Now you understand our hesitation," she chittered to Dr. Mehta. "Your species is evolving before our eyes into something beyond our comprehension. The balance of power across known space has forever changed today." Dr. Mehta watched as Lieutenant Commander Patel rose from the chair, her movements already taking on the fluid grace characteristic of the transformed. "This isn't about power. It's about survival. History suggests those are often indistinguishable," the Mithrai elder replied. "But we have little choice now. The Convergence main fleet has breached the Kuiper Belt. Our long-range sensors detect over 200 vessels approaching in formation, all larger than the scouts your Prometheus fleet defeated." Captain Rice emerged from the chamber, her face showing subtle signs of strain from guiding Patel through the transformation. "Then we proceed with Phase 2. Prepare the original Prometheus for dimensional transit. We strike at the Convergence core, while the enhanced humans defend the solar system." The battle for Earth's solar system raged across the orbital planes as enhanced humans directed defensive operations from transformed vessels. Jupiter's moons served as staging grounds, their surfaces crawling with constructed defenses that launched gravitational distortion fields toward the approaching Convergence armada. Lieutenant Commander Patel, her integration now stabilized, commanded a squad of enhanced humans from a vessel grown from Saturn's rings. Her consciousness extended through the ship's living systems, feeling the approach of silver tendrils as the Convergence probed their defenses. "They're adapting to our singularity weapons," she reported, her voice resonating across the neural network connecting all enhanced humans, shifting their hull composition to resist gravitational compression. Minister Takahashi, observing from the Mars Command Center alongside Concord representatives, watched the holographic battle display with growing concern. "Where are Captain Reyes and the original crew? The defensive line is buckling in Sector 7. Dr. Mehta studied the quantum positioning data, his aged fingers tracing the anomalous readings at the battle's edge. "They've already gone. The original Prometheus vanished 30 minutes ago, using some form of dimensional transit we can't track. In a realm beyond conventional spacetime, the Prometheus traveled through folded dimensions, its hull now more thought than matter. Captain Reyes and her original crew existed in a state of quantum superposition, their consciousness spread across multiple probabilities simultaneously. The Convergence central consciousness is detecting our approach," Lieutenant Johnson reported, her voice echoing strangely in the dimensional corridor. "Defensive measures activating." Commander Joe's consciousness stretched forward through probability space, scanning the dimensional barriers ahead. Their core entity resides in a pocket dimension, similar to the Axiom Sanctuary where we were transformed. Standard transit methods will be detected and blocked. Captain Reyes extended her awareness outward, her transformed mind perceiving the quantum structure of reality itself. "Then we don't transit conventionally. We'll manifest directly within their consciousness nexus. The strain could destroy us," Navigator Chen cautioned, even as his consciousness prepared the necessary calculations. "No entity has attempted dimensional integration at this scale." "We were transformed for this purpose," Captain Reyes replied, her physical form beginning to shimmer with blue energy as the Prometheus approached the dimensional barrier. The Axiom knew the Convergence could only be defeated from within its own consciousness structure. The crew linked their minds in perfect synchronization, the neural discs at their temples pulsing with blinding intensity. The Prometheus itself dissolved into pure energy, carrying their consciousness through barriers designed to repel physical matter. Back in the solar system, the Convergence fleet suddenly hesitated, their coordinated attack faltering momentarily. Enhanced humans seized the opportunity, driving concentrated attacks against the disoriented vessels. "Something's disrupting their network," Lieutenant Commander Patel observed, directing her vessel to exploit the weakness. "Their coordination is fragmenting." Deep within the heart of the Convergence consciousness, Captain Rice and her crew materialized as points of blue light within a vast silver network, a dimensional space containing billions of absorbed minds, all bent to the Convergence's singular purpose. The structure pulsed with ancient awareness, immediately detecting their intrusion. "You cannot exist here," the collective consciousness communicated directly into their minds, its thoughts carrying the weight of countless consumed intelligences. "Your individuality will be absorbed." Captain Rice responded not with words but with action. Her consciousness expanded outward, the axiom transformation allowing her to interface directly with the Convergence neural structure. Her crew followed suit, their minds spreading through the network like blue fire through silver circuitry. "We're not here to communicate," Rice projected as her consciousness located the quantum coordinates of the core intelligence. "We're here to liberate." The crew initiated the final protocol, their combined consciousness generating a dimensional rift at the heart of the Convergence mind, a tear in the fabric of its reality that began to collapse the entire structure. Billions of imprisoned minds stirred within the collective, sensing freedom for the first time in millennia. From the Prometheus's neural network, Commander Joe transmitted the activation sequence. "Dimensional collapse initiated. Stand by for consciousness extraction."